I think it's important to follow the science, listen to the experts.
This is Truth to Ponder with Bob Bierman.
The idea that you can get up here and talk about what you know, what the evidence, what the science is, and know that's it. Let the science speak. It is somewhat of a liberating feeling.
Behold the wheel of science! If you want to avoid the coronavirus, you have to rip off your eyebrows.
Like shave my eyebrows?
Rip off your eyebrows!
For well over a year, we have been subjected to misinformation, phony science that never lived up to the expectations, moving goalpost, a ruined economy, and now we're spending trillions of dollars of taxpayer money to do things that have nothing to do with recovering from the coronavirus, commonly known as COVID-19. I was thinking the other day, and I wish I had had the time to put together a group of clippings of audio bites of things that Dr. Fauci said and then changed his mind. But the program is only 1 hour, and I would run out of time. Literally, I would run out of time if I tried to give you what he said one day and then change the next week and the next week and the next week. We're over a year into this. Mask unneeded, mask we need them. It's a patriotic thing. Now we need to wear 3 of them, maybe 5. I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking. These people are nuts. They didn't know what they were doing. And in the case of Dr. Fauci, I really believe the man is trying to undo the mistake that he made years ago regarding this particular virus. Back when this was simply your weekend show, up until about August of last year, I started challenging some of the narrative that I was hearing, and I was doing it from the perspective of actually working in emergency management. I wasn't just watching the nightly news. I was actually watching webinars and seminars that I had to deal with on a daily basis with all the national and, in the case of where I was working, statewide and countywide predictions. We were trying to prepare for an incredibly nasty event that was going to theoretically wipe out millions of people in the United States alone in a short amount of time. We're not talking a year. We're talking just a matter of months. We were told we would hit numbers of 2.5 million by last summer. As time went by, I started questioning a lot of what I was hearing from these so-called scientific experts. In many cases, they're guessing. In many cases, they're using flawed computer models that gave us baloney data from the Imperial College. And in some cases, I truly believe there were things that were covered up. They never wanted you or I to know. I'm deeply offended that Dr. Fauci, the highest paid United States government employee, making more than even the President of the United States, was investigating gain-of-function studies on a coronavirus for years. How it could be weaponized, gain-of-function. And around 2014, that became illegal in the United States to do. So where did the virus go? It and our own taxpayer money went to China. Ironically, a little town, they keep trying to tell us it was a wet market, a little town called Wuhan, China. We have been buffaloed and given a pile of baloney, or choose your own narrative or name. We have been lied to. We have been abused, misused, businesses bankrupted by a virus that was played with by Dr. Fauci himself. Why the man is even in the government and not in a prison is beyond me. And he's Joe Biden's pick. Now he can say whatever he wants, just like he said, I can share my view of science. Well, everything you shared from last year has been all phony, baloney, and wrong. You have never gotten it right yet in 1 year. Now, regardless of your feelings, and I have very negative feelings about, quote, this therapy they're passing off as a vaccine. By the way, somebody shared with me a little notice that I found rather fascinating. It's about the Merriam-Webster dictionary, where they just recently changed the definition of a vaccine. I mean, very recently. See, before, the traditional understanding that you and I probably have had for ages about a vaccine, and I'm going to put it in simple layman's terms, I think it'll say enough. Just like for polio or the measles, you had some reduced version of that same virus that was not deadly, and we get inoculated with something like it, and our body then is able to build antibodies, so when we actually face the real thing, we are prepared not to be overwhelmed. That's the simplest way to put the definition of a traditional vaccine. Giving you a little bit of whatever it is so we can be prepared in our bodies to fight it off when it really does come. Because there are some diseases that we can't fight off fast enough, and they overwhelm us. And many people suffer the consequences, and a number of people may die. The whole idea of the flu vaccine given every year, they try to predict what kind of strains of flu will be out there. They try to predict this in the summertime to have the vaccine ready before the fall in the northern hemisphere. And everybody runs out and gets a vaccine that is approximately 40% effective in having people's bodies be prepared to fight off the real thing. For those whose bodies may be overwhelmed. It doesn't make you flu-proof. It reduces your risk of coming down with a serious bout of the flu, being able to fight it off in a matter of hours or days versus many days or a week or more. Now the Merriam-Webster dictionary has gone ahead and they've made a change. Now they're talking about the messenger RNA concoctions that are supposed to have your body stimulated to produce a toxin that then your body produces an antibody for. My concern, and I'm not going to talk about it too much this hour, but I just wanted to, I'm still hesitant about this new therapy. Personally, I have friends that look at it even worse than I look at it. Even more nefarious. I'm going to take more of a, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm trying to be as reasonable and open as I can. I'm not going to buy into every theory that's out there about the dangers of this vaccine and any nefarious plans behind it. I'm not going to even go that far personally. But for me and my wife, yeah, a lot of people have died shortly after taking this vaccine. We're told it's all those thousands of, 1,000 or so people. It's just pure coincidence. Well, you told us 500,000 people died of the coronavirus, yet I can't. It's hard to get the numbers. It really is. How many people really died of the coronavirus over the past year? Is it really over 530 or 40,000, whatever the number they're touting today on the death ticker? Is it really that high? I don't believe so. And my belief is not based on some guesswork or the wheel of science like I played at the beginning there, or just, trying to pull numbers out of thin air. I worked in a county, a large county, and we were expecting thousands of deaths that never occurred. And even to this day, nowhere near those kind of numbers. In fact, the kind of numbers that county still reports, and there's actually two sets of numbers in that particular county. I can't go into a whole lot of detail. There are some things I can't tell you because I promised not to, but these I can comfortably share with you. Instead of deaths being in the thousands, they barely got into the hundreds. Start with that. And to this date, if the predictions were true of 2.5 million in the nation and the number we would have had, we're still in our official numbers. A lot of deaths they tried to pawn off as COVID-19, especially after March 24th of last year. Hard to believe that we're just about a week or so away from the first anniversary of a memo that came out from the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta. And it changed for the first time in 17 years, and it was a major change, by the way, nothing minor, major change in how death certificates and cause of death shall be reported going forward. And essentially, they invented a whole new category called PIC. I think I mentioned this, I know, last week. But for those that may have missed it, PIC, pneumonia, influenza, COVID. PIC, pneumonia, influenza, COVID. And the requirement for actually testing somebody that had died to prove they had the coronavirus was deleted. Now, based on a long list of potential symptoms, I mean, we're talking a long list. I wish I still had it in front of me because it was not 2 or 3 symptoms. We're talking a dozen or two. If somebody had some of these symptoms, just count it off as PIC, and they all got listed then as COVID deaths. Do you see how the numbers get inflated? They also indicated that effective April the 4th of last year, they would no longer be tracking any more flu deaths. So the flu just disappeared. Nobody died from the flu after April the 4th because they were now in the classification of PIC, which is pneumonia, influenza, and COVID. I'm trying to find out if 500,000 additional people died in the past year compared to, let's say, 2019 or 2018 or 2017. And trying to get those exact numbers is really difficult. But what I can do, what I have done, is I've just grabbed some counties where I know how to get in and get some accurate numbers. And you would have an idea of the kind of an increase you should be seeing. And I'm not seeing it. I go to counties that had a number of COVID deaths, and I'm not seeing that that's an abnormally high number compared to the year 2019 or 2018. In fact, it's just a little bit above, as near as I can figure, what were considered the anticipated increases in deaths because of a larger population and an aging population that is bigger than we've had in prior years. Let me give you a little bit of math here and see if this kind of helps you along. If you go with the figure that they were giving about the coronavirus of 500 and some odd thousand people dying, you get a number something like 1 in every 650 people in the United States would have died because of COVID-19. 1 in 658 people. That's the number. But in a typical year, ready for this? In a typical year, 1 in 120 people die every year in any given place, on average. And that has been rising slightly for the past 10 years. So I'm trying to figure out where we find these additional 500,000 on top of what we already had, which would change it. The numbers are not there. A lot of people that were in their 80s with COPD, other ailments, could be diagnosed because they had pneumonia-like symptoms or influenza-type symptoms as PIC. Unless then they're on the COVID list. I will say I worked with this one doctor, and she was something else, totally non-political, totally medically minded, working in that county. She could have been in any hospital in the world she wanted to. She was that good. And she started questioning some of the numbers coming out of the hospital, going and knowing some of the patients because of what she was doing. She was the interim health director. She stayed on for a while because of this. Because of the virus. She's going, wait a minute, this can't be right. I know this individual. I'm surprised he's still alive. I would have thought he would have died last year, but he kept hanging on. 86, 3 packs a day of cigarettes. Had a severe alcohol problem. In and out of the Veterans Hospital, I think 3 or 4 times in just the prior months. Refusing essentially hospice care. Suddenly he shows up at the local hospital and he dies, and he's classified COVID-19. He's one of the 500,000. We know of many cases in Michigan, many cases in Washington State that have been documented where somebody had tested positive for COVID-19, died in a traffic accident or being shot. Yeah, bullet. And they're in that 500 and some odd thousand number. There are a lot of people that never died because of having COVID-19 that are listed as having died of COVID-19. Everybody was agreeing to a lockdown, staying home for 2 weeks, in many cases risking people's financial security. When you have like a single mother working a job, limited benefits, trying to pay the rent or make ends meet. And you're telling her for the next 2 weeks, stay home, no paycheck for you. And a business, they still have to pay their suppliers. How much food went bad when restaurants had to shut down, that they had to throw out? The power bill still came in, the rent still came due. The supplier bill had to be paid. Those 2 weeks were very difficult, but those 2 weeks became 2 months, became 6 months, almost a year. And in some places still is. COVID-19 is a virus you can point right back to Dr. Anthony Fauci because he wanted to play games with gain of function. And why he is allowed to be paid and working for the government and the spokesman for COVID-19 and not in a prison cell is beyond me. The man should be immediately fired and find out if he broke any law after it became illegal to do gain-of-function studies in the United States, in sending that virus to China, what laws may have he potentially broken? I would like to know. Because a year of our life has been screwed up by that man and that virus and by China. And we have power-hungry bureaucrats who get their paycheck without fail. Power-hungry governors that have become power-hungry dictators trying to run every aspect of your life. The other night, I forced myself to watch the president's speech about the virus situation. And what really burned me, what really upset me, is how he treats the American people like little children. And we are so dependent upon Mr. Biden and Mr. Fauci, or Dr. Fauci, the fraud, for our freedoms. And he's talking about what may happen by, this summer.
If we do all this, if we do our part, if we do this together, by July the 4th, there's a good chance you, your families and friends will be able to get together in your backyard or in your neighborhood and have a cookout or a barbecue and celebrate Independence Day. That doesn't mean large events with lots of people together, but it does mean small groups will be able to get together. After this long, hard year, that will make this Independence Day something truly special.
We now consecrate the bond of obedience.
The last thing we need is the Neanderthal thinking that in the meantime everything's fine, take off your mask, forget it. It still matters.
Assume the position.
In the coming weeks, we will issue further guidance on what you can and cannot do once fully vaccinated.
Thank you, sir. May I have another? Thank you, sir. May I have another? Thank you, sir. May I have another?
In many ways, this is how the American people have been treated by Dr. Fauci and the entire coronavirus task force under the prior president, President Trump, and continues to be treated today. Like little children, we can tell you what to do and how to live your life in a free nation. Because we can. Gretchen Whitmire may end up facing criminal charges, just like I think, St. Andrew Cuomo, the pious, should in New York. Here's what we know about the virus. Things that are not disputed. Most people that die of this virus are well into their 80s. Most. Governor Whitmire and Cuomo, they were sending infected patients back into nursing homes, where many died. And in the case of Governor Cuomo, tried to cover it up. I'm amazed that everybody talks about his 7 indiscretions, or maybe by the time this program comes on, 8 or 9 others may have come out of the woodwork. We're all concerned about groping, but the fact that thousands of people unnecessarily died in the face of the real science, you don't put sick people with the healthy ones in a nursing home that are highly vulnerable. That's why the deaths per 100,000 in New York are so much higher than a place like Florida, where the governor there shielded those most at risk from the virus, those in the nursing homes. And then you got Joe Biden trying to tell Texas and Florida how to do things when it's the blue states that screwed it up the most, doing it Biden's way to begin with. At least last week, Governor DeSantis made it clear that he's a little bit concerned about the, Joe Biden's hints of future COVID lockdowns, and he pledged to shield his state from any such idiotic measures issued by Washington. You know something? If you look at the numbers of infections and deaths in the states that locked down compared to the ones that didn't? Can you guess which states actually did a little bit better? The ones that didn't follow Dr. Fraud Fauci's advice. The problem I see with this pandemic, it's been used and abused by politicians to do things they never could get away with otherwise. Number one, exercising control over your personal freedoms. I don't care what Mr. Biden says about what I can do on the 4th of July. If he thinks it's going to be a big deal to me to go out on my deck with a couple of folk and have a hot dog on the 4th of July, I don't care what he thinks. My friends and my family will decide what we will do best for us, based on the circumstances around us and the conditions we see. We are seeing the infection numbers down 75%. Of course, they changed how infections are counted. Back on the 20th of January, coincidentally, when Mr. Biden became the president-elect, selected by fraudulent voting, you can't convince me that he got 80 million votes. That's just too preposterous to believe. The man can't even tie. He got through a 20-minute speech. I would love to have seen him do the State of the Union address for, I don't know, an hour and a half, and then take questions. I don't think he could do it. This entire year has been a freak show of Fauci and Birx and others that made predictions that kept falling apart, never were right. No, we don't need a mask. Yeah, you need a mask. Now you need 3. The goalposts get moved every night. And thanks to the WHO, the WHO, that is in bed with China, Biden will get a few more additional passes as well. Because, see, they changed on the day that he became the president. They changed the rules on how you count a case. Last year, I was telling you on this program that some of the cycle thresholds, the CT value of the PCR test, were insane. Let me explain simply. I can remember as a young kid in a classroom, a teacher saying, if I was to give you $1,000 or give you a penny doubled every day for 30 days, which would you rather have? The $1,000 today or wait to the end of the month? Well, most kids wanted the $1,000 until they realized that you double a penny for $1,000, you double a penny every day for 30 days, you got about $1 million. The same thing is true with a cycle threshold. Every time a PCR test goes through a cycle threshold, it is essentially doubled. And the inventor of the PCR test, who said you really shouldn't use it for single diagnosing anyway, started saying when you get past 20 to 24, it's insanely inaccurate. You get bogus readings, false positives. Well, we were having cycle thresholds of 37. Forget 24, 37. Suddenly now we're told after Mr. Biden took office that the World Health Organization, which he was getting us back into and giving money to, says what we need to do now is just make the cycle thresholds lower and take the test, but there better be symptoms or it doesn't count. What? All last year, we heard about the millions of people with asymptomatic spreading. And that's why everybody's afraid of everybody in a grocery store that's not wearing a mask, because that person's infected. He's coming toward me. He's going to kill me. We're all going to die because that person's not wearing a mask. There's some real science out there. We're told to follow the science. I'm tired of the phony science of Fauci and all the frauds. And the governors that just lock down and do meaningless things. When you go to the store, you can't buy plant supplies, but you can buy necessities only because Governor Whitmire, says that's all you're allowed because I have the authority to restrict your freedoms and your life. And I think she really was getting excited about it in ways that I don't want to talk about on radio. I think the woman is sick, power hungry, and is unfit to be a governor. The same as Cuomo in New York. St. Andy Cuomo, the pious in New York. He is unfit to serve as the governor of New York, but the people of New York have been so buffaloed, voting Democrat, voting for these fools for decades, thinking they're doing the right thing. There's so many people that I know that believe all the lies, and they believe this, and they believe all the phoniness and the frauds. They wonder why their taxes are so high and life is so miserable. I don't blame anybody for trying to escape New York or New Jersey. I really don't. Why pay $6,000 a year taxes on a small home when you can pay $1,200 somewhere else? Have a better quality of life and not have these tyrant governors telling you how to live your life. They use the virus for election fraud. You know it and I know it if you're honest, if you're intellectually honest. You notice, I tell you what, I'm going to wait till after the break. I really need to take a break, and then I have some other things that are very important to share. But I'm telling you, I've just about had all I can take of fraudulent science being thrown at us, just like, the ice cap should have been melted by now, according to Al Gore. 10 years ago? I mean, he said back in 2005 they'd be gone in less than 5 years. Well, it's 2021. They're not gone. My house is not underwater. Every prediction has been wrong. Just like everything that Fauci has said about this virus keeps being wrong.
This is Truth to Ponder with Bob Bierman.
The no-cost wedding coming up. Shalom Aleichem. This is the nice Jewish boy, Jonathan Kahn, your Jewish connection, bringing you the riches of your Jewish roots in Jesus. Now get your pen out as fast as you can so you don't miss out on receiving a special free gift you're going to get and love in a moment. Now today, wedding receptions are out of control. A typical wedding reception can cost $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, $30,000. So when people plan a wedding reception, they have to count everything out, weigh it out, whom to invite, whom not to. Each person costs you. You stop thinking about relatives as people. You start thinking of them as plates. Uncle Henry, he'll have the filet mignon. That's a $50 plate. Aunt Bessie, we can save on her. She'll have glazed chicken. She's a $35 plate. We save $15 on Aunt Bessie. But back in the ancient biblical Jewish wedding, it was totally different. Back then, you really didn't have to have caterers or expensive receptions because everybody was invited. All your relatives, your neighbors, your friends, the whole village, the potter, the carpenter, the shepherd, the friends of your friends, strangers, people passing through, everybody. So we read of Messiah with all his disciples invited to a wedding at Cana. And so when Messiah speaks of salvation, he compares it to a wedding in which the man throwing it says, go out into the highways and byways and compel them to come in. Notice there's not one mention of glazed chicken or filet mignon. Instead, there's a spirit of abundance. It's no cost. It's free. It's blessing. There's freedom. There's generosity. And so you, if you're born again, you are not of the world's wedding. You're of Messiah's wedding, his celebration. Live like it. Live with a heart of God's abundance, having more than enough, God's prosperity, God's generosity, because this wedding is free and overflowing. So you live your life the same way. Want more? Ask for the blessings of the bridegroom. Now, how often you get offered something priceless, free, and wonderful? Well, here goes right now. Sapphires, it's as precious as it sounds, guaranteed to help give you a life of joy and a walk of victory. And the incredible mystery of the temple doors, you'll love it. It's priceless and it's free. How do you get it? Easy. Just remember Jesus' real Hebrew name, Yeshua, and dial it. That's all you do and you'll be blessed. Just dial 1-800-YESHUA-1. But call now, 1-800-YESHUA-1. Now I invite you to join me. in bringing salvation back to God's ancient nation, Israel, and all the unreached peoples on 5 continents with over 1 billion people. Just call now, 1-800-YESHUA-1. That's YESHUA-1. Or write me direct, The Nice Jewish Boy, at Box 1111 in Lodi, Lodi, New Jersey, and the zip 07644. That's A Nice Jewish Boy, Box 1111, Lodi, Lodi, New Jersey, 07644. Till next time, this is Jonathan Kahn saying Shalom Aleichem. Peace be to you, my friend, in Messiah, Ol Haolam, the light of the world.
This is Truth to Ponder with Bob Bierman.
I can't believe that I talked as long as I did about the virus in the first segment. In many ways, I've got so many pieces of paper on my desk here in front of me. I was going to talk about other things, but I don't know. As I kept thinking about what we've gone through as a nation in this past year, where people have been deceived to be. Let me say that again. Where people have been deceived to be over 1 year. If you think about it, it was a year ago. It was a year ago that we started this whole lockdown, pause for the cause, whatever you want to call it, all over the country. I think it was pause to flatten the curve or whatever title any state or federal person gave it. Had a lot of terminology tossed around. And it brought our nation to a total standstill and created a lot of unemployment. Schools closed. We thought, okay, how many weeks is this going to be? Well, it's been a year in some places. Los Angeles, they're still closed. And the teachers' unions, they're afraid that their little students are going to kill them if they don't wear a mask or protective gear or a hazmat suit, when worldwide that has been proven not to ever be the case. You know, we're told to follow the science. The science says the students don't spread the virus to their teachers. And they don't get sick. And if they do, it's very mild. In some places, private schools and Christian schools stayed open. They're doing fine. But see, these teachers' unions, oh no, these little students are going to kill us. You know, I got a kick, and I'm not going to play it because of the obscene language, but there was a school board meeting, and they didn't realize that the public could see it. They were on Zoom, and they're using foul language about, you know, we don't want to babysit those kids, and they're calling the parents stupid and all that. And they want to stay out until we fix climate change now. It's no longer the virus, it's climate change. In some school districts, yeah, we'll come back to school and teach your little munchkins or brainwash, indoctrinate your little kids after we fix climate change. Another fraud. All these decisions that, you know, shut down, limit capacity at the grocery store, wearing these masks, the directives to stay 6 feet apart, even went outdoors. I see people in cars by themselves wearing a face mask. What is wrong with you driving in a car by yourself wearing a face mask? Do you think that the face mask is protecting you? There are surgeons that'll tell you that this is a bunch of baloney. A mask does not stop a virus. Even Fauci believed that a year ago when he said, don't wear one. Then wear one. Stay 6 feet apart. You know, in the past several months, I've had to fly 2 times. And they make a social distance in the airplane terminal. I got to stay 6 feet apart. Have to wear my face covering. Avoid people because they may be infected. Then they shove us shoulder to shoulder in an airliner for the next 2.5 hours. Now, what sense does that make? Even walking outside to get on the aircraft, they had people going, you must stay 6 feet apart at all times, even outdoors. And all these crazy rules came out because of the dire predictions that came out of the Imperial College of London, that a massive COVID surge was around the corner and millions of Americans were going to die by the summer. The experts warned that Americans would be hospitalized in numbers that would overwhelm everything nationwide, and a complete collapse of the medical system, and then even more fatalities. Yet in the many cases where these dire predictions from the experts just turned out to be, they were way off base, every one of them. The real data ended up being just a tiny fraction of what had been modeled and predicted by the governors, by Fauci. Some will say, well, maybe the mitigation measures were successful. I don't really think so. I think it's because what we really do know now, the modeling was totally bogus and faulty and fake. Looking back, when you look at some of the crazy predictions we had last year. 1 year ago, right now, middle of March, 1 year ago. You remember New York Governor St. Andrew Cuomo the Pious, the darling of the media. He should be leading the nation on the coronavirus. Maybe he should run for president. You remember him? Andrew Cuomo, who should be the president, leading us out of the dire straits of the coronavirus. He goes based on everything he knew, that in 45 days, New York would have an input of 110,000 beds that would be needed. They would need 37,000 IC units. They would need 40,000 ventilators or some ridiculous number. Remember that? We need ventilators now, or everybody's going to die. And the federal government gave them, I think about, 8,000 ventilators. We couldn't give them 40,000. And so what happened? Well, when it all peaked about a month later, instead of needing 120,000 beds, they needed 19,000. Not 110,000, needed 19,000, which they had. They had 53,000 beds. The total ICU patients, well, it hit at 5,225, only 13% of what the governor said he was going to need. Remember, they sent the hospital ship Hope, to New York City. They set up the Javits Center. They never used any of this stuff, and he's still shoving what sick people he had into nursing homes, killing people. And they're worrying about him groping somebody. They should be putting him up on charges of manslaughter. The drama played out all over the country. Newsom, who's probably going to be recalled, he figured that, of his 75,000 beds, they would need another 50,000. And every time he came up never needing any of the stuff that he was getting. California data now shows that as of January of this year, a total under 23,000 or less than one-third of the state's normal capacity was needed. Flawed predictions emerge from all these universities that know everything. That's where you want to send your kid and put them $100,000 in debt. To these fine universities, they couldn't get it right. The Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation at the University of Washington predicted that by March 31st of last year, that Michigan would peak COVID-19 hospital usage on April the 10th with 14,000 patients in beds. And what did Michigan have? And remember, this is when Governor Whitmire is saying you can't buy plants or a shovel to plant, food. You might need food. You can't buy that stuff. You can only buy what I tell you you can buy, because I am your fearless governor, leader, and I'm your ruler. By the way, in this country, we do not have rulers. Let's get that straight right now. In the United States, there is no such thing as a ruler. Back in 2009, right around the inauguration of Barack Obama, or Barry Sorrento, whichever you prefer, he actually used the term, as we begin to rule. And I heard that and I was like, you've got to be kidding. They think that they are our rulers? I am sorry, our nation has no room or desire for a ruler. We barely need leaders. What we need are statesmen and servants. That's what our country was founded on. Statesmen and servants. You know, a citizen kind of government. The idea of being a professional congressman for 20, 30, 40 years, or 47 years as Biden was, the man was a professional baloney artist. I want to say something else, but he was a professional baloney artist for 47 years. He accomplished nothing in his life except getting a government paycheck. And somehow, on his government paycheck, owns all these homes and he's worth millions of dollars. I think he sold us out. I don't think he's a great investor at all. I think he's a fraud. And he's now our president fraud. The metrics were thoroughly flawed. They didn't need 14,000 additional beds. They only needed 3,000 total, which they had. New Jersey, which I think, aren't they the ones that had the highest deaths per 100,000? Led by Governor Murphy, who shut down everything. You can't go to the gym. You can't do this. You can't do that. You must stay home or die. Rutgers University, a fine overpriced university in New Jersey, one widely cited in the media at that time, like including the Wall Street Journal, determined that they about 23,000 hospital beds statewide. The state would, you ready for this, face a shortfall of 300,000 beds. Let me say that again. Governor Murphy, which had the highest death rate of any state in the nation, thanks to incompetence, they predicted a 300,000 bed worst case modeling, and this was if they didn't do something. The state's usage peaked on April the 16th at 8,224 beds being needed before falling sharply. COVID hospital census plateaued only at 3,600, not 300,000. And by the way, they had 23,000 beds available. The governor's offices of all those states did not respond to any questions. They will not talk about it. But they continue with their shutdown, stay at home, what you can and can't do, what you're allowed to do. I think these people are getting high and drunk on power. And what do the scientists at Rutgers say? Nothing. They don't want to talk about it either. These policies of last year and all over the world. You know, we watched as Italy last year. I can remember this because, remember, I was in emergency management. I lived and breathed this around the clock for months. And that's when I began to see the, shall we say, the chinks in the armor of these so-called, leaders and authorities and experts. They were all wrong. I can remember distinctly that we were showed all these videos of overwhelmed hospitals, like supposedly, I think CBS News or ABC, one of the main networks, showed this overrun ICU. And it's just a massive chaos. And they're trying to imply that was New York. It was actually a video clip from Italy. from like a month earlier. They just use it as stock video. And nothing like that was happening at all at the time. But see, in Italy, the part of Italy that got nailed the worst in northern Italy is a part of the nation that the Chinese have purchased factories. And they travel in and out of there on a regular basis. Remember, at the beginning of this pandemic, China stopped internal travel, but people could travel from Wuhan all over the world, including where all the factories are. And you want to know why China? In case you ever wondered, why would China need all these factories, in Italy? Real easy. Final assembly of goods made in China being done in Italy gives them the Made in Italy sticker that makes people on Fifth Avenue in New York think they're buying something important without it being saying made in China. That's why. It's just to fool the public. No more, no less. All these policies. We watched Italy struggle. We were told it'd be worse here, and it wasn't. Fears of the overwhelmed hospital system have recurred in many nations all over the world. Even as the medical industry have, in most cases, been able to handle the surges in care, our hospitalizations peaked early this January at 125,000 nationwide. And that number has dropped and dropped and dropped ever since. Cases are going down. If you look at a state like Florida, they're way down. Florida's a lot more free than New Jersey or New York or Michigan or California or Arizona. Having little kids wearing masks all the time is child abuse. I read a great article. I may share it later this week if I have time, from a surgeon who has done 10,000 surgeries in his career, still active, that really lays out the phoniness of wearing a mask. As he points out, and my wife has backed it up because she worked in an operating room for years. You wear these masks in a sterile environment. If you have a fever or you have a virus, you don't go in. The mask is to keep primarily bacteria, which are vastly larger than a virus. That's what they're meant for. And by the way, inside of an operating room, they raise the oxygen level in the room for a reason, to compensate for the loss of oxygen you get from breathing through a sterile paper mask that is changed on a regular basis. How many of you, when you have to wear a mask, have some little paper mask that you throw on that stays in the car for weeks? That's not sterile. What's on the outside of that mask you're touching anyway? I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous. And we're making kids live in fear. The predictions were wrong. The predictions were misused. And what do we get for all of our effort? Mail-in voting. Voter fraud. And I go back to, Georgia. We spent a lot of time up here. I've known this state since 1975 quite well. I've lived here. And what I saw happen in Georgia this year with the election was frightening. One of my friends spent some time running around the middle part of Georgia, looking up where people had claimed to live when they registered to vote for mail-in voting. And he's finding open fields where you'll have a series of address numbers for 15, 20 people. I live at 1053 so-and-so road in so-and-so county, and then others with other numbers climbing up. You go out there, you find nothing but a field, never has been a home there. Totally bogus addresses that the post office could never deliver to. Now, Georgia has 150 some odd counties. If you just had 100 fake ballots in each of our counties. Small one, big one, even Fulton County, just 100 fraudulent. That's 15,000. President only lost by 14,000. So please do not tell me that it was honest voting. We still don't know. We've never seen these signatures on the ballots in Fulton County, where thousands upon thousands magically appeared from underneath the table. I don't believe Raffensperger as far as I could throw his lying body. He lied to us. So did Kemp, the governor. They're both anti-Trumpers, so they didn't care. But because of all the scrutiny, they couldn't fix it in time to save the Senate race. And by itty-bitty tiny margins, with all these people coming into the state and registering and then going back to their home state, we have no idea of how many. I mean, it was open. People were saying openly, we're coming to Georgia to register to vote for Ossoff and for Warnock, and then now we're going to go back to our state of Michigan or wherever they came from. You will never convince me that the election in Georgia was honest and fair with integrity. The Secretary of State violated Georgia law. It's funny, now that they'll be on the ballot in 2022, they're having the legislature fix all the voting irregularity problems going forward. Not looking backward, only going forward. I think that Kemp and Raffensperger, the governor and secretary of state, I predict they'll be primaried and lose. And we'll see what happens in November of 2022. There is enough anger among the voters in Georgia to get rid of them. Because they allowed this to happen. Because they were never Trumpers to begin with. Supreme Court, well, another story for another day. Listen, our time is about to run out. I'm going to change direction entirely tomorrow, I promise. But I just felt this on my heart to share these things with you today. Sometimes just finding the truth is not easy in a world full of lies. I've used that as a theme a number of times, looking for truth in a world full of lies. If you appreciate the program, would you let me know? By the way, I've lost a few emails from some people, so I wanted to write you back, but in a transition on a computer, it got gone. I apologize. If you like what we're doing and you want to support us financially, our address is 21 Berkshire, Berkshire, 21 Berkshire Lane, number 263. That's our P.O. Box. Very secure. 263, Sky Valley, Georgia. The zip code 30537. Make the check payable to Ancient Word Radio. Once again, 21 Berkshire Lane, number 263 in Sky Valley, Georgia, 30537. May God bless you.
This has been Truth to Ponder with Bob Bierman. To find out more, visit our website, truth2ponder.com. That's truth2ponder.com. Truth to Ponder, shining the light of truth in a darkening world.